Go ahead. You know that. Got it. Yeah, okay. Have a good night. Should be all good now. Let me just go up to that one and see what I see. So we're unmuted now, so everybody will hear everything on there. Now. There. We kind of have something down in the bottom.
Can you imagine doing a historic conference with this?
And then-
And especially with the public? That's something else. So if you talk, it'll. It's okay. It will follow you.
It is an owl.
You were talking about stopping sharing. When did you want that to happen? I thought you wanted to have the address up.
Yeah, maybe we just have it on the address. It's a bit of a delay there.
What is the audio? There's a bunch of fears.
Yeah, maybe.
Is that good? Can we turn the volume down with that?
I think that gives you, it gives you the time to move out.
Oh, is that what it's for?
I'm guessing it's
Sensor.
If somebody said something they shouldn't have said, it's like, whoop, that's not going. You can censor that out.
Give it tea or coffee or water. David. Yes. You met Io.
And I met the young lady.
Sam,
Yeah, Sam.
I think we met you the last time when we came in the summer.
Steve. Yes.
Steve
Steve's the IT guy.
doesn't want to be the.
No, I don't want to be.
Oh, back to the sign-in sheets. Listen, I just learned, I think it comes to create electronic copy. Their text messages to you.
Why?
I just, you can take your messages and put your finger on the copy and then send them to yourself in an email. I'm getting so techy. Mr. Al Jabadi, how am I doing?
You're getting there. So we'll keep working on it. I like it.
Allah.
Yeah, I love it.
Allah. So I was just gonna start by doing this introduction, right? And, then I thought I was gonna do an acknowledgement for the. Mom, I don't know.
Yeah, Angela, welcoming people. Sam.
So, just for me to begin here, and then I'm just gonna go to an introduction, basically our housekeeping. Do you want me to do the housekeeping, or did you? Yeah, and then they're passing on to. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
No, I have reading on the chat.
Okay, I need to be. Once I get out. He'll never do that. That's correct.
Okay, so yeah, once you, because it was letting, asking to admit people.
Okay. John Bola, your vice principal. I'm Eileen. Nice to meet you. I live here in Birchtown. Very nice.
See, Julie, that's when we talk,
And then
right? You just want me to do that and then step away, I mean, it's all the same.
you do that, but
First-
you will still be here.
Yes.
Yeah, no problem. Be there, I mean, and the conversation is going on. So, almost 20 and a half. Andrea would,
And
Right.
where will I be
I
admitted?
just wanted,
yeah,
I was gonna
so
say
you'll
to
show up here.
see, I gotta go
On the training. I was admitting into it,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
I'm gonna mess this up. His last name. I know. Hiya.
I'll let you check.
I gotta get the D in there.
So it'll just pop up on this.
Yeah, it'll just pop up to say admit, and you can hit admit. And then when everybody's all in and you're all ready to go, you can just hit play and it'll show up, but I'll be here.
Yeah, we're gonna all out.
Maybe it's. It'll come up here.
You like this one?
But once you're all done, then you can just play.
Imagine that color, I forget it.
But we'll play, do it like it was.
No, it won't do it automatic, it'll just bring it up full.
Oh,
Yep, yep.
You do?
Got it, he's easy.
I'll take it for you.
I'm gonna get-
I won't see it because my eyes are.
I'll have trouble. In person and.
Thank you.
That's right. Well, no, they're in BC. There's still a way until the 2nd or 3rd of October, and Kelly and John are in Spain right now. On holidays, but I sent out the email to everybody letting them know on the board. With the come as you may, please.
Should we like the?
Yeah.
Good
evening. Welcome. Just
Oh, thank you.
find a comfortable spot.
Thank you very much. I'm going right in the right position. Nice to meet you. You too. Sarah. Sarah. No, then you're land on the board. Yeah. No, what is it? Shit, 100. Why are some of them? Look at this one. This is, I think, all excited. Wow. And I even our friend go to the board. I totally heard. That's this. Mail back to you. I'm meeting.
No, I see.
I pick up and not like, oh my God, I gotta get better at this. You might get better at what? Then I did. Because usually I do that, but you saw it on the website.
Well, you must have better.
I mean. Can you return no phone number and email from me? I saw it on paper.
Oh, yeah.
If we know that you will come, that's all that matters. That's what Kelly said. Yes.
Sarah, how are you? Beige one. But I already had one. Filled up the. Big one, and I didn't know they had pinkish.
Yeah.
They're nice, the Andrea lock.
But that's it. You just pass that along.
Sure, yeah.
Their names, their things there.
Yeah, so. Yeah, so all you have to do is come here.
4, 3, 2,
Yeah.
1. Everybody wait for the owl. Good evening, everyone. My name is Doreen Cooper. I'm the president of the Black Loyalist Heritage Society. On behalf of the board of directors, our executive director, Andrea Davis, and our staff, we welcome you all to our center this evening, including our in-house and our virtual participants. It is a great honor and privilege to be bringing the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission's Human Rights on the Road session to here tonight. And I would begin by giving us a prayer of thanks for the ability to come together this evening to collectively listen and partake in the importance of knowing and understanding our human rights. We gratefully acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and ancestral unceded territories of the Mi'kmaq people. This land is governed by the treaties of peace and friendship. We acknowledge the 400-year plus history of communities of African descent and the 50 Nova Scotia communities throughout the region. We thank the descendants of the Mi'kmaq people for their continued support. As we begin this evening, just a couple of housekeeping for our in-house guests. Washrooms are at the front of the center. And this setting is a means of getting all of our questions and possible questions. We encourage folks to ask concise questions. And if you're not able to pose your questions this evening, please feel free to send them to hrcinquiries@novascotia.ca. As we are engaging in community learning experience, we want to remind folks of the expectation of language and messages. We encourage folks to stretch and take breaks as needed during this presentation. We will take a few minutes break as we align with our program flow. The most important information that I want to present to everybody here this evening is this presentation will not be dealing with issues connected with specific cases with the commission in the interest of progress integrity. As a result, we have provided inquiry contact information in the chat box and on screen. Wish to talk about a particular / or specific situation, kindly reach out to the commission via the contact information. I will now pass this presentation over to Ayo, who is the Director of Race Relations for the Human Rights Commission. Ayo?
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Darlene. And welcome to everyone for being here tonight and joining us for this session. So first of all, I just want to clarify the information that Ms. Darlene had referred to. We're going to be providing that later on, so everybody can have the contact email address and also the phone number for the Human Rights Commission. So that will be provided to folks much later on. So I'm the Director of Race Relation, Equity and Inclusion within the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission, and my name is Ayo Alandevi, as Ms. Darlene has previously referred to. So first of all, I just want to say a big thank you to Ms. Darlene, and we started this conversation back, I think in the spring?
June, in the May, first part of June.
Yeah, so we started this conversation to come out to Birchtown to have this session with the community. And she has been very generous in giving her time to be able to make this happen. And together with Juanita Peters, the Executive Director of Africville Museum. So it was so good to be able to engage both of them. And now we're here today. And in the same tone, I would like to say a big thank you to Andrea, the Executive Director of the center here. Andrea and her staff have been amazing in tonight's possibility. Email back and forth, trying to strategize, trying to fix something, going out to Sobeys, going out to stores, to put posters out. I mean, we put you guys to work. We appreciate this, collaborative approach to things. And I just want to say that this hopefully will be the beginning of that relationship as we continue to build our communities together, and as we continue to ensure that the dignity of everyone is upheld, no matter who they are, no matter what they look like, no matter where they come from. We want to make sure that we're working towards that and ensuring that. And I'm so thankful tonight that I'm not here alone. So there is an African proverb that says that a person is only a person because of other people. So I'm here tonight with my colleagues from the Human Rights Commission, and they're going to be helping us tonight to help engage in this conversation. So I'll get each one of them to introduce themselves, and it's not in any particular order. There's no ranking here. So we're all here, we're colleagues. So I'm just going to start from this angle here and get every one of them to go and do the introduction. So Steve, if you want to get started.
Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Roy. I'm a Project Administrative Coordinator for the Race Relations Equity and Inclusion Group that I lead.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gola Taraskar. I'm Manager of Dispute Resolution for the Commission.
I can't see everyone to stand up. Hi, everybody. My name is Sam Reed. I'm the African Nova Scotian Liaison and Education Officer at the Human Rights Commission, and I work on the team with Ayo, Angela, and Steve. Great. Hello, I'm Angela Doyle Faulkner. I am the Mi'kmaq Indigenous Liaison, Cultural Educator for the Commission, and I work with Ayo, Steve, and beautiful Sam, and I'm honored to be here.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you very much, colleagues. And I also want to acknowledge those who have joined us online. We welcome you all into this space, and we're hoping that everybody will have a great evening as we continue with this conversation. And we also have one of our colleagues I don't want to forget that. We also have one of our colleagues joining us on Zoom, and I'm going to get him to introduce himself because he's going to be part of this presentation tonight as well. Kendrick, if you can hear me.
I certainly can.
Yourself, please.
Thank you. And I think I heard you say you're going to save the best for last, so I appreciate that.
No sound.
Is it? Is
I
it
think it's
something?
no, it's,
I think he's.
no, it's I think he's on mute on us, isn't he? Isn't there view live? Right, he's on mute, I think.
I turned this one down earlier.
Okay.
Start over.
Can you try again, Kendrick?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Perfect. And I was saying, Io, thanks very much for indicating to the crowd, to the audience, that you saved the best for last. I appreciate that. My name is Kendrick Douglas, and I'm one of 2 legal counsel for the Human Rights Commission. The other person that works with me in my capacity is Kimberly Franklin. So glad to be part of the conversation this evening.
Thank you very much.
So just a quick word that we would like to share with all of you. So I'm just going to read what we wrote because it's really capture what we want to say from our Mi'kmaq perspective. So I would like to respectfully ask our participants and all of you to reflect on your own decolonization journey as we consider what it means to be located on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. Our unceded territory, meaning Mi'kmaq had legal and rightful ownership of the land and the sovereignty as a nation. It is not just enough to simply acknowledge the systematic injustices Mi'kmaq and Indigenous people continue to endure, but to have a full understanding of who has and continues to benefit from those injustices. I think we are all here because we understand the dignity of another person, and that requires action. And I would like to thank each and every one of you for coming tonight.
I'm going to stand again. Thank Angela again for that. And I'm just going to kind of do the same thing for the African Nova Scotian community to give the acknowledgement that the birthplace of African ancestry or African presence is because of Nova Scotia, and it started here in Nova Scotia, and especially here in Birchtown. And whenever I come back to Birchtown and I'm on the land, I feel more connected to my ancestors, and I feel more connected to my ancestry and to my roots, because that water, this land, the shore, you know, that is what transferred us here to stay here, and those that went back to Freetown, which is still out. And also, as you all know, I'm not preaching to the choir here, but it's so special to know that the Loyalists, now the descendant of the Loyalists, them being here is why all of the, not all of, but a lot of the communities that exist in Nova Scotia are because of the Loyalists. And I just think that's so special. And I wanted to give space to mention that today. And to know that we stand on their shoulders, and it's because of them and their contribution for resilience that we're here today. So thank you all for coming and for allowing us to be here. And thank you to the Loyalist Center. It's really always so special to be here. I think even more so that we're able to do this session with you all today here at the center. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam. And of course, we've got everyone out here tonight, and the weather doesn't look the best. It's a little, you know, like it's gonna rain or it's not gonna rain. Some of us could be home doing something else, but we got you out anyway. And for those online, the same thing, we taking you away from your evening. So the question is, why are we here tonight? You know, why this gathering? So our main purpose for being here tonight will be in threefold. So the first one is we want to talk, we want to have some meaningful conversation. And we're going to be in that process, have the opportunity to share with us the history, the mandates of the Human Rights Commission. We're also going to be talking about the structure. So it makes sense for us to be able to have a better idea of, you know, what the commission looks like and what guides the work of the commission. Why and how do we do what we do? And then, of course, we will spend enough time to be able to explain the process. So do you have a human rights, do you want to understand how the human rights process works? This would be a great opportunity to be able to do that. And we also want to be able to share, want to be able to share more about the commission. Want people to be able to better understand how things unfold within the commission, and also be able to share with you, should you want to reach out to us, this is how you can do that. So I think later on we have some cards that we have here that have the phone numbers and all of that. We're going to share it with folks. And for those who are online, we're also going to have the a screen with the information, with the phone number and the email address. We're also going to be sharing that later. And then, of course, we want to listen to you. So we want to be able to hear from you. We want to be able to, to have a two-way conversation based on the presentation that we've had tonight. And if you have general questions that we can be able to answer here tonight, we will do that. And if we cannot, trust me, we'll get back to you. So that's why I'm hoping some folks can leave their number and their name and their email address. So we can always, get back to you with this. So essentially, these are the reasons that we're here tonight. So I just want us all to relax, get one family, and those of you online, relax, get a cup of tea or coffee or something, and let's have a meaningful session tonight. Thank you.
So before we hop into the history of the commission, I'm just wondering, actually, does anybody know why the commission started or how it became? Not so much. Okay, amazing, fantastic. Get to talk then. So the commission, actually, let me read my notes, but it started really because of the contributions of the Black community and coming together and working with the premier at the time. I think it was Danfield, yes. Because they noticed discrimination was happening to members of the Black community, to African Nova Scotians and people of African descent. So that was established in 1967, but it was years before that. Working with government and mobilizing people like Dr. Carrie Best, we have on the wall here, Dr. Oliver, Buddy Day. They were all very much involved in that process and making the commission happen. So the set efforts of Black pioneers across the province. The original mandate was focused on issues of race, religion, and ethnicity. And actually, the Nova Scotia Human Rights Act is one of the best acts. I think best is the best word for it, but it is because it's so vast and it represents a lot of different identities. So we are one of the few that I think more of them have gender identity involved in it and things, and that was added in 2012. But aside from that, it is one of the most vast and understandable acts that exist. Or more comprehensible, I should say. So I thought that's very interesting. So the legislative authority of it, to break it down, the Nova Scotia Human Rights Act, which is actually just behind you here. We have some, you can feel free to take some afterwards, the little blue book. And basically everything that we do is because of the act. So if it's in the act, we have to follow it. No one should be harassed. So if you are harassed, you come to us and we handle that. So that kind of governs how we function. So the Nova Scotia Human Rights, thanks, Io. The Nova Scotia Human Rights Act is quasi-constitutional, and that just means that it supersedes other provincial and municipal legislation when there's a conflict, unless the legislation specifically says that it operates despite the Nova Scotia Human Rights Act. So it takes precedence, which I think is good to know, especially if you have issues in the court or other things like that. You can always come back to the Nova Scotia Human Rights Act, and it should take precedence unless it states that there's the conflict. And what else? Oh yes, I was going to ask either I or Kendrick, since you're on the call with us, and we don't always have the legal team with us, if maybe we could give an example of that. I don't know if I turn the volume down, but we can also maybe go back to it. So Kendrick, I'll give you a moment when you get to your part. Maybe you can give us an example of what that quasi-constitutional would look like in an actual real time. So then just to go back to the mandate of the commission, we administer and enforce the Nova Scotia Human Rights Act, as I just stated, as a provincial statute. And most provinces actually do the same. So there's, of course, the Canadian Human Rights Commission, and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. But each province really, they should be functioning under their provincial act, just like we do. There are other jurisdictional, things that come up, where we wouldn't be able to, handle those things. And that's when it would go to the Human Rights Commission, or then you would maybe, take it into a legal matter, or we would go through the charter. So also to help build inclusive communities and protect human rights in Nova Scotia through education, research, and program development, which is primarily our team, our REI team, Race Relations, Equity, and Inclusion. So again, that is myself, the African Nova Scotian Liaison Education Officer, Angela, the Mi'kmaq Liaison Cultural. What was your? I'm so sorry. Angela, she changed it up on me.
It's this long. So, yeah, it's the Mi'kmaq / Indigenous.
Yes.
Liaison and cultural educational.
Officer, cultural.
Basically, I represent and help Indigenous Mi'kmaq, and that's my job, like, to make sure, and everyone too. Let's just be clear, we all support many different cultures.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Steve, of course, is our program coordinator, and I was the director. So just to speak about my position as well, much like Angela's, we represent everybody, and we help to make sure that everyone is educated on what the commission does and about their human rights. But we pay special attention to those communities, being as marginalized as they do, and just of course going back to the history of the commission, kind of the reason why, to make sure that we're honoring that. Lastly, to advise and make recommendations on human rights issues to government and organizations throughout the province. I really like to mention this point because I don't think a lot of folks know that, but we do have a feedback form that we're going to give you afterwards. And really for us especially, it's important to know what you want from us and how you see the commission being able to serve you, and how you can rely on the commission as a resource and a tool to use if you're in a situation that's not fun. So that's important to know that your ideas, your thoughts, they matter. And it's our responsibility to take those back to the commission and to make sure that the policies represent what you need. So yeah, just wanted to mention that as well. And I think that's it for me. Thank you. It might be Kendrick, so don't forget your example, please, Kendrick. If you thought it. It's for me too.
So thank you very much, Sam and Angela. Thank you for helping us to kind of understand the history and also setting what the mandate of the commission is all about. As an entity, so the commission has a structure, and sometimes people dealing with the commission may not clearly understand that structure. So just to make it easier for us, we've sort of broken it down into kind of 3 different categories. So the first part of it is the administrative part of the commission, and then we have the governance, and then we also have the adjudication portion of the commission. So so for the administrative part, so basically the everyday day-to-day work of the commission is dealt with by this group, and we have essentially like the 4 different core groups within that administrative parts of the commission. So that's the CEO office, where we have our CEO and director of the commission. And presently, our CEO is Joseph Joe Fraser. So we'll call him Joe. So I said Joseph Fraser. So we'll call him Joe. And we also have within that office, we also have a registrar that is connected to that office. And basically their function is to help us make sure that our process is aligning well and we're doing things the way we should be doing it. And then there's also an executive assistant within that office that helps to kind of keep everyone on point. And there's the dispute resolution team, which is I'll say 70%, I would say, of our staff will be in dispute resolution. So these are the people that actually deal with human rights cases. So we have all of our human rights officers that are part of this group. And my colleague, Gola, is the head of that group. So she kind of helped, to steer people in the right direction within the group. So, so dispute resolution, like I said, and Angola is going to be speaking to that much later on in terms of how that whole process works. So these are the human rights officers, and and they kind of take care of day-to-day human rights cases connected to the commission. And we have the race relations, equity, and inclusion. And of course, I'm a little biased because that's my group. So, and I think Sam kind of spoke to that a little bit, and Angela is probably going to be talking to what we do much later on. And then we have the legal team, which you heard one of our colleagues, Kendrick. So basically the legal teams are lawyers. So they help the commission to better understand the legal implication of things, because I'm not a lawyer and most of us are not lawyers. So there are certain things that are so nuanced and you have to have that legal lens of things. So we're so fortunate to have the expertise of this legal team on there, and also and the legal assistant also that also help to make sure that the work is done properly. And as far as governance is concerned, this is where we have the human rights commissioners who are appointed by an executive order of the Executive Council. So the commissioners have their responsibility described within the Human Rights Act. And basically they are responsible for the strategic direction of the commission, as well as making decisions on human rights issues, including potential referral to boards of inquiry. So these commissioners, like I said, they are very diverse in in structure, and they will come, they will make decisions and will present human rights cases before them, and they essentially decide on what happens with those cases. And I think Gola might also be speaking to that much later on. So the other part, which is the adjudication part of this, is there are times when the commissioners will decide that cases will have to be referred to a group called the Board of Inquiry. And so the Board of Inquiry overseen by a board chair who is nominated by the chief judge of the provincial courts of Nova Scotia. So and typically when this is done, the commission will have to kind of kind of approve that appointment. So when cases are not dealt with at the level of commissioner, at that point, the commissioners can now, vote and then make that recommendation that the case can go to Board of Inquiry. So, and typically when something goes to Board of Inquiry, at that point, it sort of almost becomes a public thing. So for some of you that might have checked out our website before, if you go on our website, you probably see some of Board of Inquiry decisions that are on there. So most of the time when things go there, it becomes public, public knowledge. And like I said, folks can definitely check out some of the historic complaints that have been on there. So essentially, that sort of gives you a very high level overview of the structure of the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission. So, and of course, we'll have opportunity for question and answer much later on in the presentation.
So our team essentially exists because of the Donald Marshall Jr. decision and his case, specifically because of our treaty rights. And so, we are here collectively as a team, and we go out and do education together in other different communities all across the province. So we say the RREI team, so we really are the race relation and equity inclusion team, making sure that every Nova Scotian has support and the education that we need to share. And so yes, Education and Training Division of the Human Rights Commission, monitoring the implementation of policies on race relations adopted by the provincial government and its departments. We provide and advise on race, equity, inclusion policies, and program development across organizations and government. And we lead community engagement efforts for the commission. So that's why we're here. And we're going to be doing a lot more of this, and not just in adult settings, if you will. That will go into the school setting. Our kids need to know our rights. And because of African Nova Scotians, and because of the Mi'kmaq, and because of what we've gone through traditionally together in our own experiences, this is our, I think, our duty to make sure that our children grow up knowing their rights and that they deserve everything great. So that's why we exist, and I'm so grateful for that. So now we have Kendra.
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you. Oh, can you hear me okay?
Right here.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. Good evening again. And before I guess commence with my formal part of my presentation, I'll just I guess piggyback from what Sam said in terms of an example of the quasi-constitutional status of rights-based legislation. So the term quasi-constitutional essentially means that any legislation, for example, the Human Rights Act, it's paramount, it's supreme, it stands above all others. So when a conflict arises between the Human Rights Act and another act, the final say goes to the Human Rights Act. So let me give you a real live example that's actually taking place now in Nova Scotia and abroad. There's a recent decision that talked about or challenges the quasi-constitutional status of the Human Rights Act. Labor legislation in Nova Scotia and in other jurisdictions have a dispute resolution process where people can go and take their complaints and have it resolved there. The Human Rights Commission also has a dispute resolution process. And of course, the Human Rights Act allows for individuals to go to the commission and have their matters resolved there as well. A recent case of the Supreme Court of Canada said that labor legislation, where it provides for dispute resolution matter or procedure for all issues, basically is paramount, and therefore the commission doesn't have jurisdiction to hear any other complaint. That really is a challenge to the quasi-constitutional status of the commission because for the longest time, provincial human rights legislation has always enjoyed the status of always being the supreme law of the land or of the province, if you will. This decision is now saying, well, you know what, hold on a second, because labor legislation has this, I guess, exclusive clause that allows arbitrators to resolve disputes, in particular human rights disputes, that is good enough to oust the jurisdiction or the quasi-constitutional status of the commission or of human rights legislation. So generally, whenever there is a conflict, the Human Rights Act always wins out. So it could be as clear as mud because there's a lot of technical stuff involved in that, but essentially the Human Rights Act generally prevails over any other act of the province or of the land. So, and if anyone has any questions, by all means, I'll be happy to take them now or at the end of my presentation.
Thank you.
So with that, no, not a problem at all. So with that said, let me start my comments with respect to the legal unit. And before I do so, I think it's probably important to say a quick word about administrative procedures. And when I say administrative procedures, I am referring to a public.
I'm so sorry, Kendra. I don't want to be distracted. What we're trying to do right now, we're just trying to mute one of the participants, and I don't want to take any distraction away from
Okay.
the.
Sure, yeah.
Just give us a second, sorry, one sec.
Okay, let's see.
Yes,
yeah,
Okay.
there we go. There. Okay,
That's
that's
what
what's.
There we go.
So everybody's good.
Thank you, Brayden.
Thank you, Brayden.
There you go.
So.
I apologize, Kendrick, you're good to go, I think.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just go back to the beginning. So when I'm talking about administrative procedures, I'm really referring to a public hearing. And that is the process where a board chair hears the complaint and then makes a decision about whether or not someone has been discriminated against. Administrative procedures are meant to be informal, inexpensive, which is relative, of course, and timely. And with that in mind, let me address legal. And as a starting point, let's assume a complaint is sent to a board of inquiry. A board of inquiry, as per the Human Rights Act, is held in public. So any member of the public can attend the proceeding. That said, there are times when a hearing can be private, but only in certain circumstances. A board of inquiry chair serves a role similar to a judge. A board of inquiry chair is the person responsible for deciding whether the allegations described in the complaint amount to discrimination. And at this point, I think it is important to note that anyone who believes they are being discriminated against.
There's another one.
Oh, sorry, did I hear something else?
Go ahead. We have one.
Okay. There's a couple of things I think individuals have to keep in mind. First and foremost, if possible, write things down in a journal or on a piece of paper or somewhere. Document as much as possible. Save emails, save letters, gather any documents that you think will support your allegations. I can certainly tell you after years of doing this, it will become very valuable when it comes time to prove in your case or your complaint. Saying something is discriminatory and proving something is discriminatory, two different ball games. First, as well, I think it is important to highlight that complainants know they can represent their own interests, or they can hire a lawyer to represent their interests. There is a widespread misconception that the commission represents people who file complaints, or the commission provides counsel to complainants. I am able to talk with complainants as well as respondents, but I'm not allowed to give legal advice. I can certainly talk about procedural issues and procedural matters and evidentiary issues, but I cannot advise an individual how to go about running their case. What the Commission Counsel does do is that we represent the public interest. And it is not lost on me that the public interest means different things to different people. Thus, it may change from case to case, but essentially and theoretically, it means it is always of interest to the public to examine allegations of discrimination. Legal counsel for the commission can certainly, as I mentioned, speak with complainants and respondents about procedure and evidence, but again, cannot, under no circumstances, provide legal advice. It has been my experience and practice to explain the procedure to those who are not familiar with the process. Demystifying the procedure they are about to engage helps ease the anxiety to some degree. It's also important to keep in mind that complainants bear the burden of proving their complaint. So what does that mean? It means you must prove your case. That is, that it was more likely than not that the allegations that you made in your complaint happened than didn't happen. After you make your case, the respondent, of course, has their opportunity to tell their story. At the conclusion of the complainant and the respondent and the commission putting their stories forward, the board chair then reviews all the evidence and the testimony, goes away, reviews it all, and then makes a decision within 6 months. And it should also point out that any decision from a board chair can be appealed on a question of law to the Court of Appeal of Nova Scotia. And with that said, if there's any questions, I will be more than happy to take them from the audience or anyone else.
Does anybody have any questions about what Kendrick was mentioning about, I know it was hard, was a little bit distracted there for a moment. But even just maybe about the both sides of the respondent and the complainant, any of that language, I mean, he's really good, he'd be happy to answer anything, just to put that out there. But I think that was really great. Thank you, Kendra. I'm sure when we get to go as well, it will generate a bit more questions, and we're gonna have ample time at the end as well.
Yeah, I've got.
Towards the end, we'll have some,
Yeah.
some time for question and answers after the presentation is over.
And I just wanted to make an announcement. We're having some issues for those on YouTube. And you're probably reading my lips now. You can't hear what I'm saying. So we're good. I don't know. That's a typical announcement to make now that I'm thinking about. So we're gonna put a new link in the YouTube, and I'm just hoping somebody can hear me. So we're gonna put a new link in the YouTube. You can follow that new link to be able to see what's going on. But I just realized that people probably will not even hear what I just said. So
Well, if we're moving on, we can turn the speaker down. You guys wanna turn it down? Yeah, we can come back to Kendrick for questions later.
Oh, actually, Kendra, since the YouTube, maybe if there's a way to comment on the YouTube link, if you were able to access it or send the message out, if there's a way to do that on the link, I'm not sure if there is, since you might be the only person. that
I'm
can
not
access
sure,
it.
but I will have a look and see if there's
We can see
anything.
it, But we can, hear it. Yeah, that's okay. We can move on.
Okay, we're gonna have to move on. And I apologize for the loudness that's about to happen. There's a video that's gonna auto play. And I will try to get it under control. I believe we can.
Go. Going, slow it down. Keep going a little bit. That's good. 3:32.
Everything hear me hopefully. So this is my unit. And as Io was saying, we are responsible for about 60 to 70% of the commission's work. What does this mean? The goal is for us to work with complainants and respondents to resolve human rights complaints through a restorative process. The old title of this position used to be Manager of Investigation and Compliance. It's a very heavy title, right? Around 2014, I believe the commission made a very deliberate decision to move into a dialogue, restorative focused process. So the name and the program underwent an overhaul in values and culture. What we're seeing now, and I have to tell you that yesterday was my 3rd month with the commission. And I have an incredibly new staff. And so we are all new. And so the way that we're entering into this work that we have is really embedding our philosophy in a restorative approach and really trying to have a sense of dialogue and fairness and equity around every decision that we do. And so I'm here because I really feel like as a new manager and as on behalf of my team, I really want to reset in our relationship with the community. And that means that, meaning that can't speak, it's like a fresh quarterback coming in, you're fresh, you can't comment on the previous players, but I can tell you we're fresh and we're keen and we're ready to be held accountable. And so that's what I wanted to describe today, our process. And of course, on behalf of the commission, and on behalf of my team, present day and historical, may not have got things just right all the time. And we need to own that. We need to wear it and we need to do better. Okay. And so part of our relationship is growing tonight. And so as I describe the process, what I'm about to describe, I have to tell you based on my learnings from complainants and respondents over the last 3 months, not necessarily what folks have been experiencing, okay? And what I have to do is own that and stand in it and say, all right, this is a new relationship, what are we going to do? So a high level framework. Human Rights Commission, there's a rubric, there are factors that we must consider in order to establish jurisdiction on any allegation brought to us. There is a framework that's a combination of protected characteristics. So these are all of the characteristics that are common. The common denominator for all of these is that every member of each group here, as diverse as you see them, age, race, color. Interestingly, race and color are 2 different things. Anybody ever wondered why? Because within each cultural and racialized group, there are levels of skin tone that impact how we're treated, right? And so there is colorism. And so in my own community, my parents, I'm a first Mi'kmaq born settler from India. And in our own community, we see the effects of colorism and we see them in many communities. We also have religion. Okay, creed. What is the difference between religion and creed? Religion is an established structure, maybe a church with a formal doctrine and a Bible or a Quran, or in the case of our tradition, a Hindu Vedantic tradition, right? What is a creed? A creed is a way of life that is based on ethics and values and a lifestyle and a commitment to something greater than you. So creed could be embodied by being a vegan, your commitment to the environment, being a vegetarian, your commitment to anti-violence in the animal world. So we have to have these conversations. Sex is basically gender identity, gender expression. Also to think through, we are so steeped in the binary of gender and sex, male, female. As we know, the display of humanity transcends any binary. So we have trans community members, we have people who have different sexual orientations, two-spirited, two LGBTQ members of our community. Gender identity, gender expression, how do you express your gender identity? We have physical and mental disabilities. So these are the people who have needs. There's also retaliation. We have a basic human right to be protected from retaliation on the basis of who we are, okay? Irrational fear of contracting an illness. This is a very interesting one, and Kendrick, chime in here if I don't have it right in the Nova Scotia context. But this actually emerged specifically here because of AIDS and the case of the complainant, and his name is escaping me now. But he was a huge figure growing up, and I can see his face. So irrational fear of contracting an illness. What does that mean? Let's flash forward to 2020 and the pandemic. Okay, and then let's flash forward to the all of the anti-Asian sentiment that was attached to the coronavirus and the location of Asian people being denied housing, jobs, because they may carry the virus. So when we say irrational fear, it's irrational, it's not science-based. And as we know, politicians will work that up and people will become pretty irrational pretty quickly. Ethnic or national origin, what country you come from. You and I drove up this afternoon, and many people think Africa is a country. Whoa, Africa is a continent of so many countries. So if you're from Nigeria, or you're from Mozambique, if you're from Somalia, if you're from Egypt, the experience will be unique to each national ethnic origin. Of course, Aboriginal origin goes without question. We are Mi'kma'ki. We all have responsibilities under treaty, and we have to uphold those. Family status. Now, I used to think family status meant marital status. It's limited to only children. Kendrick, please jump in and make a comment. But family status is an interesting one because it's evolving. This legislation and applications, as Kendrick was saying, is evolving through the cases that we're receiving right now. Would you know that family status is an emerging status for caregivers of elderly parents? And so the implications, and being one myself recently, the implications of my need and other people like me to be accommodated at work for the care of our elderly people, that's yet to be tested and soon to be tested. However, it's limited to children at the moment. So this means that if you have children and your landlord, which we do have a current matter, clearly leaves you a voicemail that says, we do not allow people with children to rent our apartments. Hello. Okay. Marital status, of course, we all know the privileges that come from marriage. Okay, we know the relationship between historical marriage between two cis binary members of society and who was excluded from that. We also know that there are discrepancies in the way that pensions are applied for common law. So there are all kinds of things. Source of income. Where do you get your money from? If you're on income assistance, you may not be welcome to rent an apartment. Okay. Political belief and affiliation. This is really interesting because this challenges us to really think about someone's freedom to belong to a group, no matter how personally distasteful and outside of our comfort zone and bubble, but they have the right to belong to that group politically. And this is where we have to honor their right to belong to that. Of course, measured with hate laws and all that other stuff. Association right to belong to any association that you wish, any group, and of course, harassment and sexual harassment. Now, before the commission, before coming this summer, I spent the last 2 years specifically focused on sexual violence and sexual harassment. And I have to tell you, the changes in the last 3 years as a result of the Me Too movement has really opened the door and provided an awakening for so many people to share their experiences. Yes, Steve?
Sorry, I just wanted to mention, we're having a tech problem where Kendrick can't speak through the speaker, while someone else is having a turn. So he just messaged me that, he just the only thing he wanted to add was that the Human Rights Act is a living document, and that is a huge effect with the Me Too movement. It's evolving with society.
Yes.
And as you were saying earlier, we had a few when it started. We had race and color, I believe, were the two ones that we started with. And then over the years, we've just added more and more. And last, I think the petition was 2010 for gender identity and gender expression. And I was looking up in 1991, and sexual orientation are on there. So we are evolving.
We are evolving.
So that.
Thank you, Kendra. And this is the exciting part and the privilege, frankly, and why all of us are so excited to be in this community. Because we're learning, nothing stays the same, and we're really learning from the people that come forward with the allegations. And our job, as Kendra said, is to make sure that we are neutral for all parties, procedurally fair, which means that everyone, a respondent, a person accused of alleged discrimination by a person who comes forward with a complaint, has the right to understand the facts of that person's allegation and has a right to respond. And so Kendrick was speaking previously about a lot of misconception about us being an advocate or an ally for the complainant. We must get right in the middle and preserve a neutral, procedurally fair process for all. And so the prohibited area, so you can have these protected characteristics, and these are the areas where our legislation will apply: access to services or facilities, education, retail, health. We saw the Sobeys example, accommodation, housing, campgrounds, purchase or sale of property, employment, volunteering, publication, broadcast, or advertising, or membership in a professional association. So these are this is the rubric within which we establish our jurisdiction. So a lot of times, I think the next slide is the cycle.
Do you mind if I just add a little?
Yes, please.
comment from
Jump
Kendrick?
right in. Yes.
So Kendrick was mentioning intersectionality, which is something to do with
Yes.
you want to speak to.
Yes. Thank you so much.
So yeah,
Let's go back to the previous.
yeah, but he was mentioning that there's no limit to the amount of characteristics
Yes.
that can be identified by one.
Yes, so if you want to go back, yeah, perfect. So we realized that one person, one identity, let me just use myself as an example. I am cisgender, which means I was born into a female body. I identify with being a woman. I also carry an ethnic national origin of India, which is its own country. I also carry, what else do I carry? A religion that is other than Christian. So when we talk about a person coming, we talk about the intersection of their protected characteristics. That means that you will have more opportunities, sadly, the way society is structured, if you're different, to experience potential exclusion or vulnerability. And we must recognize that. So each case, we have to examine the protected characteristics that folks are coming with, the prohibited area. Is it in a workplace? Is it in a shopping mall? Is it in housing? Is it in membership of an organization? And then we have to establish the facts. And we have to really, as Kendrick said, the details, we must really, it's one thing to say that you are experiencing discrimination, it's another thing to prove. Okay, and we focus on the facts, and I'll get into that in the next slide. So the commitment of the commission. This is the restorative commitment, and Steve, can you move that? So this is, it begins with an inquiry, okay? Now, this is step one, inquiry. What is an inquiry? It means you are inquiring into see whether your situation or your allegation fits our jurisdiction. So we receive inquiries by email or telephone, okay? At this stage, and my team of 12 for the dispute resolution, including human rights officers and our support staff. We are examining for jurisdiction at this point. What is your protected characteristic? What is the area that you are alleging is a prohibited area that you've experienced behavior or discrimination in? And then the third point that we look at in this framework of the current act is the last state of discrimination. Okay, that is 12 months. So according to our current act, and our current act, Kendra, jump right in the chat, has not been amended in a very long time. And we do realize that to put a number on, you have to come to us within 12 months. Well, we know the experiences of people with trauma. You're just not ready. You're just not ready. I was speaking with a complainant yesterday. It took her years to come to herself to admit it. And so our response is, it does not meet the legislative. So there is work to do. Like this process, there is work to do, okay? So the next step up at the top underneath that bar, it says accepted complaint. So just because you call or speak to one of my folks, doesn't mean that you have an accepted complaint. Okay? The rules of procedural fairness tell us that the complaint must be clearly and concisely written in a way that will allow the person who is alleged to have committed the behavior to read it, understand it, and respond. And it must be written in the words of the actual person who experienced the behavior, right? So it's like first voice, their lived experience. So we do not craft or support complainants in writing complaints, but we guide them through that process with prompting questions, and the language we preserve must be their own. At that stage, we do all kinds of technical things, like make sure that we have the right legal name of the alleged respondent. And once it's past our legal, past our team, then it becomes an accepted complaint, okay? Now, I'm gonna take us back to the phone call or the email. At this inquiry stage, there is an opportunity for a restorative context, which means that somebody comes to us with an issue that meets our protected characteristics, prohibited area, and a 12-month last day of discrimination, as it currently stands right now. And if parties, by parties, I mean the person coming forward with the complaint, the complainant and the respondent, the person who is alleged to have done the behavior, okay, the person who is responsible. If they wish to engage in a restorative conference, we will take them through a solution-focused and respectful dialogue process. And we will take them through that process to arrive at a settlement. Okay? So when you think about it, as we go around the circle, more time, more people, more resources, more pain, more trauma. Okay? So we don't want to go all the way around the circle unless we absolutely have to. And I'm going to explain that there are times when we must, okay? But right now, if we can get them into a dialogue situation to settlement at the inquiry stage, we do it. So as we go around, this is the first off-ramp. Now we go up here to accepted complaint. There's another off-ramp. We've got the complaint. It's signed, it's dated, it's vetted, it's approved, it's correct. The respondent has had a chance to respond to it, understand fully the facts and the allegations of the complainant. Well, can we start and talk? Can we have a restorative process or a conference dialogue process that is focused on settlement? Can we do that? Sometimes you can. Sometimes parties have different understandings of the facts. And sometimes the allegations are under question. Okay, so we do not proceed into this process unless there is a basic agreement of the facts. It is not a fact-finding process. It is a dialogue-driven process. That means legally, there is no finding. It's not, I'm going to hold on to the Board of Inquiry because Kendrick kind of took us there. That's a very formal quasi-judicial process. This is where we're not weighing evidence. We're talking about three broad questions between parties. What happened? How were you impacted? How were you affected? And what do you need to do to make things right? So it's a healing, restorative, and as we know, restorative justice, restorative convincing, it comes from indigenous customary law throughout the world. So we are just creating a safe space for people to solve their own problems in an equitable and safe way. However, that requires a certain agreement. Okay, if, let's say we have a case where there's an allegation of discrimination based on a protected characteristic in a workplace. The complainant comes forward and says, I was discriminated and not hired for a job because, let's use the example of pregnancy, okay? Then the employer says, no. You weren't hired for other reasons. And the employer is not going to enter into a restorative conference if they are adamant that they had other reasons for not giving this employee the job. Maybe there's a disciplinary history there, maybe, and so the facts are up in the air. That's where we come down here into investigation. So I just want to come back to the point about the historical name of this group, investigation and compliance. Okay. And now we've moved to dispute resolution, which really feels good and dialogue-y and relational and really cool. But at the same time, we have this formal mechanism and we have investigations. Okay, so that means, what does the investigator do? Examine the facts. This is what Kendra was saying, dates, times. Who did you talk to about what happened? Can you remember where you were when it happened? Were there any witnesses? We start to have to gather the information and the story that is external to the allegation of the complainant is bringing forward, because we look for corroboration. We look for discrepancies, and we're not a criminal court. We work based on a balance of probabilities. So if it is more likely than not during our investigation that the evidence, the facts tell us it is more likely than not that discrimination occurred, we make a finding that discrimination has occurred. Okay, it's not a criminal court. The standard is probability. So what does an investigation offer? We talk to everybody involved. We gather the information, we gather the witnesses, we gather the documents, we gather, that would be, I guess, let's go back to the allegation of discrimination based on pregnancy in the workplace. We would look for a human resources document that says that every employee is entitled to a leave. Like, so we would look for some underarching documents that would support the employer's position that, yes, we value human rights. We would include all that. Once we have an opinion and we don't enter into a case with an opinion, it's the hardest thing, but it's not our job. We follow the facts. It's like that old, that show, what is it? Just the facts. Just facts. And but during the telling of the facts and the sharing of the facts, we try to embody at the inquiry stage, at the stage where we're supporting an accepted complaint and the investigation. These are people with trauma. These are people with hard experiences. These are people that have been through stuff. And we must focus on the facts, but we must do so in a way that is trauma informed and culturally competent. Okay, which means that the service that my team should ideally be delivering is something that honors the harm, alleged harm that folks are bringing to us in such a way where they feel heard, feel attended to. If we make a decision that at the inquiry stage that their allegation does not meet our jurisdiction, they should know why. They should understand our process and rationale. It's not as easy as us saying, nah, that's not a complaint. We want to be accountable. We want to explain why. So similarly in an investigation, you know, when something happens to you and you're forced to retell it, guess what happens to your neurobiologically? You are reliving it, the trauma. So we really try to minimize the amount of time that our complainants come forward and have to tell their story. And we haven't historically done a good job, and I can't say for the next little while we get our team into place, we'll be doing a great job, but that's where we want to go. Once we conduct our investigation, we write a report with recommendations to the commissioners. Now, we, Human Rights Officer, Dispute Resolution Team, we just serve at the pleasure of the commissioners. We don't make any decisions. We make recommendations based on our analysis of facts. And facts meaning historical background and context. So for every allegation of discrimination in Nova Scotia, what I would love my team to begin doing is examining the historical context of the community that this protected characteristic comes from. So we are not having to prove the case of, let's say, Islamophobia or homophobia or anti-Black racism or whatever it is. We are aware that our society accepts people and accepts and does not accept other people. This is historical fact. So we're trying to move in a direction where that also a balance of probabilities is going to weigh into our decision making. We're not there yet, but we're working. So the recommendations we have to the commissioners, if we find based on our investigation that there is no merit to the allegation based on fact, which happens, we can recommend dismissal. Now we recommended it goes, we just had a commission meeting last week. Few dismissals were recommended. They have the ultimate say. We can also bring any of our attempts to settle matters to the commissioners. We must bring them forward because a settlement may be okay between parties and between us as facilitators, but do the commissioners feel it's fair? And does it reflect what they feel is needed in the case? We bring us forward. We can also recommend a board of inquiry, and this is the quasi-judicial process that Kendrick is doing work on. This is basically a formal public hearing where the facts are aired in public. It is chaired by an independent adjudicator, and they make the decision about whether or not discrimination has occurred. So this board of inquiry is where, if we can't arrive at a clear understanding of the facts that it's accepted by both parties and we're up in the air, let them have their say in a public forum. And sometimes it's important for specific matters to go forward to a board of inquiry because of their weight and their ability to influence human rights in Nova Scotia in a broad way. So sometimes we send them for that matter. Yes.
And I just wanted to add that Kendrick wanted to add another layer, that if people disagree with the decision of the commission and the commissioners, they can ask for the decision to be judicially reviewed. This basically means the judge of the Supreme Court of Nova Scotia reviews the matter and concludes whether the decision was reasonable or not. So there is
an appeal mechanism, judicial review. So our recommendations, if they accept or if they reject, that can be judicial review. Thank you, Kendrick. And with that, is there anything that I've forgotten to mention?
I have a question, just your board of inquiry. Who might that be made of? Like, where is that coming from?
This is a question, Kendrick. I'll ask you to, maybe we can turn the microphone. Because who is acting in the role of?
Who is the board of inquiry?
Yeah, it is an appointed person. Kendrick?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a roster of Board of Inquiry chairs. And so once a matter has been sent forward to a Board of Inquiry, the Chief Judge of the Provincial Court of Nova Scotia will appoint one or up to 3 matters to hear the actual complaint. So there's a roster, say there's a roster of 10. The Chief Judge just looks at the roster, who's next on the list, and just keeps on going down. And in some situations, the judge may actually appoint 2 or 3 members to hear the matter, depending on the complexity of the case. And so they're basically, and just so people know as well, they're basically lawyers within Nova Scotia that come from all various backgrounds and walks of life. So So they're basically private practice lawyers, some public practice lawyers, but primarily from the private sector.
And so Kendrick, could I ask you, are they by appointment?
Those ones, they have to apply to become a board of inquiry chair, and then they are appointed, I think, by the commission.
And then if parties are not, both parties have to be satisfied with the appointment for a board of inquiry, is that correct?
You're saying both parties, i.e. the complainant and the respondent?
The
No, they have
respondent.
no say. They have no say in that whatsoever.
Oh, wow.
So is
okay.
it? one
Nor does the
person or-
commission, nor does the commission for that fact, just so people know.
Okay.
Just want to know, is it one person or 2 people or 3 people? How many people are on that board?
It could be 1, it could be 2, or it could be 3. We've had primarily, there's generally 1, but we recently just did one where there is a 2-chair panel. And I don't think there's ever been a 3-panel tribunal as of yet, but the legislation does allow 4.
Thank you.
And-
You're
and
welcome.
So Kendrick,
Yes.
hearing you, so the board of inquiry, they always have to be lawyers.
Primarily they are. I don't think, from my recollection, I can't think of any board of inquiry chairs that weren't lawyers, that's for sure. And we certainly are looking for my more diverse group of board of inquiry chairs.
Absolutely. And so are we doing a good job on the roster? Question.
Are we doing a good job?
On the
I would have to
roster,
answer that in the negative.
Good question. Okay, you're going on there, but please don't be here. This is why I love looking at permission. You go.
So I just one more question pertaining to that. Are there a lot of how would you say, situations that end up at the Board of Inquiry? Or is it very minimal that ends up there?
Historically, I would say if we're doing a good job, then what we would do is take the high volume.
Yeah.
And only send the select human rights game-changing cases to Board of Inquiry. When they're in the public interest.
Okay,
And that would be where we whittle down the volume into the funnel of, society change.
so you're not 100% sure if it's a human rights,
Well, we make the
situation.
decision here.
okay,
Yeah, this is where we would decide, and then our officers would make the recommendation to the commissioners based on the investigation. And if we cannot make a determination and we need a more transparent public
Okay.
process, we will recommend a public hearing.
thank you.
Could I also add something? And please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is also that if you would rather your complaint be taken to the Board of Inquiry because you want it to be public for reasons pertaining to your complaint, that also it's not just up to the staff of the commission, it can also be the decision of the respondent. Is that right, Kendrick, Io, and Gola?
Can you hear me okay now? So I think it's important to highlight that there is a bright line test, if you will, between commission staff and the commissioners of the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission. Commission staff certainly have the ability to make recommendations to the commissioners about whether a matter should go forward or not go forward. And it's up to the commissioners to decide. And as we know, recommendations are simply just that. They can or cannot be accepted. The commissioners will then review the package or all the information they have in front of them, and then they will make the final determination as to whether or not a matter goes forward.
And
And
many times.
they're the only ones that can make that final decision whether it goes to a board of inquiry or not.
Yes, and many times we go to a commission meeting and we make recommendations and they're like, we have additional questions, please go answer them and come back.
Yes.
Like
that's
they
right.
need us to do more work.
So Kendrick, I guess to Sam's question, can a potential complainant specifically say, I just want my case to go to Board of Inquiry?
They can certainly say that, but it won't happen. Yeah.
All right.
I got a complaint to bring to the commissioners. About the process.
Yeah, I did. Just 2 questions. So, quasi judicial, doesn't that refer to 3 panel members or 3 people on a board that would kind of decide that split decision? when it comes to the Board of Inquiry, and also for a JD or a judicial review? Would that only come about if there's an error or an upset in the law and the process? More so than maybe a decision that no one was happy at? So that's just my two questions.
So.
So I missed, sorry, can you repeat the first part of the first question?
No problem. So a quasi judicial board, my understanding is that it consists of 3 people, so that there can be a person who can decide a split decision. So is that what the Board of Inquiry is about? It is a board, so would it not have more than one person that would be there to make that decision, or kind of make that decision?
Okay, so quasi judicial or quasi constitutional, generally with quasi judicial, that's something that sort of smells like an official court proceeding, but is really not. So that's where we talk about the administrative procedures that I mentioned at the outset. And in terms of the panel numbers, and it's a good point that you picked up on. So say, for example, in the case that we recently just had where there was a two panel member, if there was a deadlock, the legislation says the person, the provincial chief court judge has to appoint one of those 2 individuals to be the main chair, if you will. So if there was a deadlock, that person would get the final say, which really mathematically doesn't make sense, where it would be easier to have a group of 3. So I heard you loud and clear, but that's how the legislation is set up. And what was the second question you had?
Yeah, the second question was just about JDs, judicial reviews. Just when they come about, are they not to determine if an error or an upset in law was made? Not so much about an unhappy decision.
Just muted myself. So generally in the judicial review area, when we go to court, there's only really 2 things at play: the procedure that was employed by the commission and the decision that was made by the commission. So given all the facts that were at play in that review, was the decision reasonable in the final analysis of the matter? So they're really looking at, was there anything irregular about procedural fairness, maybe about non-disclosure of documents, stuff of that nature. So once they look at all those factors, they'll then make the determination whether or not the decision made by the commission was reasonable or whether it was not reasonable.
So based on criteria, perhaps, of that procedure might come into play.
Yeah. So there's a lot of case law. For example, the duties of an investigator. How does an investigator actually go about conducting his or her job when they're investigating a human rights complaint? There's certain sort of standards that have to be present. For example, they have to be, they can't be biased. They got to be neutral, and they have to be, what's the word I'm looking for? They have to do a deep dive, if you will, into the matter. So, and again, a lot of the case law talks about investigators being basically the masters of their own sort of process and investigation. So, but there are still some certain standards and bars that have to be met in order for that investigation to be labeled as, for lack of a better term, valid.
Oh, just one more part to that. So that would include the investigator themselves. So how does that screening take place for an assignment to an investigator based on past cases or previous cases? How does that work?
So every time an investigator goes out to do his or her job, any material that they collect from the complainant and or the respondent, that is also recorded. At the end of the day, the investigator does up an investigation report, which is then sent to both the complainant and the respondent for them then to return their comments as to whether they agree, disagree, or want to add more information to it. So it's always about being transparent and giving each party the opportunity to comment along the way or at the end of the process about whether or not they agree with what has taken place from start to finish.
Can I just ask one last question?
Certainly.
Is there an opportunity for people to request somebody from their own background or somebody of their own race or somebody of their own tradition or culture when doing that investigation if you have two different people involved?
Love the question. And yes, they can make that request. And it's just a matter of whether the resources, human resources, are actually there and available within the commission to make that a reality.
Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate. I'm not doing anything nefarious here. They're just questions. So.
It's okay. It's okay.
Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. Thanks for the questions.
All right, yeah.
One thing I don't understand is what are the consequences of the results of this? So discrimination has occurred. What power and consequences can you impose?
So, again, let's go back to our question. 3 questions. What has happened? How have people been impacted and affected? And what needs to happen in order to make things right? So the answer to that question lies primarily with the complainant. What do they need in order to feel that they've experienced justice after this allegation? And what does that look like? It looks like financial compensation. It looks like a mandatory workplace training on discrimination. It looks like a commitment to hire members of particular ethnic communities and equity groups to ensure that the workplace is more reflective of Nova Scotia. So these are all terms that are really crafted as a part of this dialogue process. So it looks very different. And it's as creative as the parties at the table.
Can you make it happen? If the employer doesn't, for example, behave completely as instructed?
Yes, Kendrick?
Sorry, I missed the last part. It sounded like something along the lines of if they don't listen to the order or direction of the board chair, basically, was that?
So enforcing settlement
How can
terms.
you enforce the agreed settlement?
So
How
a
do we
couple of
follow
things.
it?
Sorry? So the
How do we
board
follow
chair,
up and enforce?
oh, sorry, Gola, go ahead, say that again.
It's the delay. Go ahead, Kendrick.
Okay, all right. So first thing is that the Board of Inquiry chair under the legislation has very, very broad powers to order or fashion a remedy that will put the complainant back into the position they would have been but for the discrimination. So what generally happens, or some of the things that I've been doing anyways, and Kim as well, is that we would ask the board chair to maintain jurisdiction over a matter until the remedy or consequences have been met. So for example, I know Gola just mentioned that it could take the form of compensation. So say, for example, a board chair awards a complainant $25,000 to be paid within 1 month. And say day 32 comes and the money still hasn't been paid. Well, given the fact that the board chair still has jurisdiction, they can call the respondent back to the table and say, okay, what has happened or why haven't you complied with my order as of yet? So they certainly have that authority. Now, when a board chair isn't involved, there is another procedure that can also be followed to enforce an order, but it's much more complicated and much more onerous on the complainant. So having the board chair remain involved in the matter until the consequences have been met is a much easier path to travel.
Can I ask a question further to that question? So
Yeah.
what happens if, thank you, so the restorative justice or the restitution is being paid to the complainant, but the activity that they brought hasn't changed. So for example, they're saying that it's a situation with hiring, for example. The person gets money, the complainant gets $2,500, but it hasn't resolved the actual issue. That part hasn't changed. So the employer will continue perhaps to hire. Do you know what I mean? Like, how do you make that change if it's money?
So basically, I think what you're saying is that, say the matter goes to Board of Inquiry, the complainant is successful, they get compensation, they ask for education, they ask for, a job site review and stuff of that nature, but the discriminatory practices and or policies are still present or still happening. Then that's what you're asking, what happens then?
Yeah,
Gotcha.
exactly.
Generally what happens is that another complaint is made and then we go through the entire process again, unfortunately.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they're actually not sanctioned by the decision or not necessarily the recommendations, but the workplace hasn't complied with EDI or they're,
Yeah. Take for example, some of the frequent flyers, and just because of their size, we always have complaints from either the government or from health authorities. They have been sanctioned for years and years ago, but we still continue to receive complaints from employees of those two organizations. So even though they've been through the process before, and we've talked about discriminatory practices and or policies, talked about fair hiring and stuff of that nature, some of those events still happen. So they still have to be brought back again and then brought to task on those.
That's why you guys still have jobs. in other words.
Exactly. No doubt about it.
I just want to say, but that actually can break down communities. So there could be issues in terms of the community now, you know, smaller communities where you have those types of issues like that. So there's this whole breakdown that doesn't seem to really get fixed or addressed or whatever it is. So it just kind of just continues on a cycle and a cycle and a cycle. But in the meantime, it's broken relationships with the community, with the employer and the employee and
Exactly.
family.
Right. That's right.
Kind of,
Discouraging, frustration, trust issues, a whole bunch of things. You're right. Yeah, totally agree. 1000%.
So Kendrick, I think the question that I'm thinking of here is what power or what authority does the commission have in this kind of situation? You know, is it, and this is being hypothetical, so that nobody should go at this one. So is it something that the commission can go into that organization, you know, be it municipal government or whatever, and do something about what is happening, or the commission cannot do that?
Yeah, so under the legislation, again, the commission really has two main things: to administer and enforce the act. And part of that, or under that umbrella, includes the possibility of the commission actually bringing prosecutions forward. So if the commission is of the opinion that, say, for example, employer A has continually and consistently discriminates against Black people, and the commission's aware of that, they then have the opportunity or the legislative power to peek behind the curtain and see what's going on there, and then try and effect change that way. So they can bring them to task as well. So it simply doesn't just have to be a member of the public bringing their complaints forward.
Section 40.
Yeah, section 40.
Yeah, I believe it's section 40 around prosecutions. Yeah, I think that refers to prosecutions there, I believe.
And this might be for Gola as well. So just to follow up to all these questions, could it be written into the settlement agreement? Like, for example, if you want a policy to be changed, you need to hire this percentage more of, let's say, Black staff, and you have to submit like a report that you did that within 6 months. Like, can that be written into, then there's like the accountability piece there? Or is that area that we can't?
So prior to the Board of Inquiry?
Yeah, it's like as part of the
Yes.
settlement. Yeah.
It's about the strength of the facilitator and the willingness of parties to commit at the table. And then we do not close a file until all settlement agreements are satisfied. And if settlement fails, which means that somebody doesn't follow through on what they promised, then we go back to the process and we go to Board of Inquiry and we'll formal process. So we do use the restorative process. However, if it breaks down and people don't follow through their commitment, we go back to recommendations.
Does the restorative section actually help and enhance amendments to the act? As obviously, you know, new things happen or?
Yes, I'll give you an example. I met with the complainant about a month ago. She brought forward a complaint and it was dismissed under section. Basically, I can't quote the section right now, but it was about ageism.
Decision.
So it was about ageism and age discrimination in the application of the insurance policy that her employer provided her. They are exempt from the Human Rights Act. It's written in this particular section that insurance companies can discriminate on the basis of age. Now, her complaint was dismissed. However, my staff and I met with her anyway, because what's important for us to know is that as we go forward, her story is so important. Now, she is going to decide to fight this, and you will hear about her in the next couple of years, and she will take this where it needs to go. But we cannot champion it on her behalf because we must be neutral. But we can explain to her how there's an exclusion under the amendment. And then we know in our case practice, when the time comes for us to put forward our ideas and tell stories about access to justice, she's something that sticks in my mind. There's this exemption for insurance where they can discriminate on the basis of age. She's over 70, no insurance.
Can I just go back and just add one thing to the comment or the discussion around the, if there's been a policy change, either as a result of the commission intervening or as a result of a decision by a board of inquiry chair, and then there's a subsequent violation of that policy. One of the things that I've noticed over the years is that it's very, very hard to legislate behavior. And the example that I generally use is that most people, if not all people, are aware that drinking and driving is illegal. Yet, we still have people being charged with drinking and driving. So just because a policy is changed, there's no guarantee that an individual or an employer are actually going to stick to that policy change and ensure that the employees follow it. So when it does fall off the table, or when someone does breach the particular policy or practice, there has to be a will that they are able to bring it back to the commission for I guess, re-examination. So just wanted to add that.
I just have another question regarding case law. So you guys, I don't know if anyone in the room here is familiar with Gloria Bayless. She won the first ever, as a Black woman, the first ever employment related racial discrimination case in Canada. So I know that because I just spoke to her daughter not long ago, because it's important to us here, that information. So do you refer to case law at times in making, when decisions are made?
Yeah.
In
Short
general,
answer
yeah.
is yes. Short answer is
Okay.
yes, big time.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's, okay. Just
Yeah.
wanted- Okay, just wanted to make sure that that was understood, that case law is extremely important in
Yeah.
making these
And it
decisions.
changes.
And what was that last name that you mentioned? What was the name that you just mentioned?
Her name
Gloria
is
Bayless.
Gloria Bayless, Bayliss, and, or LIS, excuse me, and I just would like to do a shout out to David Levy, who here actually said to me, Andrea, look at this information here, and he showed me something on the computer, but within 2 days later, I had the daughter on the phone, just because, because it's so important and so impactful about what her mother had done for Black women in this country. And so I felt it was important that that is part of the case law that I'm sure that you have researched or is part of the decision making. And her name is Gloria Bayless. She has since passed away, but her daughter is Françoise Bailey, and she is extremely important to our history, to our Black history, as being that first case.
And you know what? I got goosebumps just hearing that. And you know what? I've done a ton of, and I haven't come across that name yet, but you can be assured by the end of this week, I will have a good familiarity with that particular case.
Thank you, David. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Just one thing about it. Françoise, she was on the CBC radio, what was that, 3 weeks ago?
That's right.
And she's a bioethicist at Dalhousie University.
Yeah.
And it was pointed out to her by her own mother that she should have been as famous as
I heard about this, yes.
Martin Luther King.
That's exactly, and she's
And
not.
he brought, and she,
Yeah.
and she won $25 from Western Hotel.
Absolutely. Imagine that. Like, this is a case that you should really explore, and it's something that we should also be sharing within our community, because these are things that are not first, they're historical. So
That
it's
is fantastic.
amazing. So
That is-
Gloria Bayless, by the
Yeah.
way.
Can you give that name again to my colleagues that are there? Because some of the sound here, I'm not getting all the sound. So that'd be greatly appreciated if you can do that.
Absolutely. And her daughter actually wrote an article, so I can
Yeah.
share with you information. David's grinning over there because he connects me and he says, call this person. I've got them on the phone within days, but I'll provide you with all of that information so that you can read that. And she's a beautiful woman. Her daughter, Françoise, like, she's just amazing
I
with
would
the
love-
foundation. And her brother is Frank Bayless, who was also a member of Parliament, I believe, in Canada. So these are things that we need to share within our
Yes.
community as historical moments that we don't get to think about. So that's just me. I'm done. I promise I won't ask any more
I
questions.
don't believe you, but thank you for that information.
Yeah, they share it with all of
I'll
us.
share it with everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciate that.
Just to-
Really do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kendra. Just to wind up how important the community mobilizing information and educating itself with the support of the REI team is, because Kendrick and I have to stand apart and be neutral and facilitate a very fair, procedurally fair process. And so when we hear things like that coming from community and you are aware and you bring it to our attention, it feeds into our work too.
right? So we're here, we're listening.
And bring it to community as well.
And bring
Oh,
it, and bring it to the
Yeah.
community. I just want to say one last thing, I promise. So a few years ago, I was going to Jamaica, right? And I was sitting in the airport and I had my passport, my Canadian passport with me, and there was nothing to do. So I started to read the pages of our passport, and I became very frustrated.
Yeah.
And disappointed, because as I was flipping through the pages of my own Canadian passport, there was not one reference that was drawn to any Black Nova Scotian or Black person embedded on the pages of the passport, and it is still not there.
Wow.
It's still not there. So I
Yeah.
made it when I went to the summit in Halifax. The federal government was there, people were there, and I said, guys, you gotta do something.
Yeah.
There's nothing in there. There's no Viola Davis, there's the
No,
book is Indigenous. I think I don't know who's in there for the Indigenous, but there's no information regarding the contribution that the Black Canadians have made to this country. And I was very disappointed. I was gonna write a letter, but I didn't have time. But I think it's important that small things like that
Yes,
just make big impacts on the community.
that's right.
We need to make change, and it starts right there in the pages of our passport. I don't care if people read it or not.
That's right. It's
Right?
there.
I didn't want to read it, but I read it. So those things are just so significant to our community.
And Kendrick,
Yeah.
could I just ask you to comment on the jurisdictional differences between provincial human rights legislation and federal? human
Yes,
rights
that's
legislation?
great.
Yes, because
Got you.
the air.
Oh, so
We
just
follow-
quickly, we have section 91 powers and section 92 powers in the Constitution. So things, for example, like the areas of discrimination or the areas in terms of where discrimination cannot happen in the legislation that Gola pointed to earlier, those are provincial matters that we can handle in terms of jurisdiction. Say, for example, an incident happened on an airplane and your rights were violated, then you came to the Human Rights Commission of Nova Scotia and said, listen, this is what happened on the airplane. We would then tell you that we do not have jurisdiction simply because aviation and travel and all that stuff is a federal matter. So you would have to go to the Canadian Human Rights Association to deal with that one.
It's the stuff that people wouldn't know, right?
Yeah.
So it's great that was
But we have excellent relationships with the federal folks.
absolutely.
Yes.
They're ready.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, wow.
I have a quick question, if I may. I'm just wondering how many people come to see you. I mean, I've spoken to many people on many things, and they won't take the time and the trouble because it's too much trouble. It's a bit like Gloria Bayliss. I mean, she won $25 after 10 years. It basically damaged her life, right? In a sense, it became the only thing in her life. And a lot of people are very concerned about coming to the Human Rights Commission because they say, is it really worthwhile? What do I gain out of it? You know, is it more trouble than it's worth? And I just wonder how much that sentiment comes to you and how much you hear it and whether you feel that you can make it felt as worthwhile trouble to take.
Yeah, you know, that's a great point, and that's a point I have spoke about at conferences over the years. In particular, I'm always marvel at the strength and courage of individuals to come forward with their complaints, first and foremost, simply because it's such a personal matter. There's economic security at play, there's mental health at play. Some may be the only breadwinner in a family. It's job security. It's all of those things that an individual has to consider and factor before they actually come forward. And then once they do come forward, there's that, of course, unfortunate potential that they will be seen as the problem employee for bringing this complaint forward, which is, of course, totally ludicrous. And then even just to fast forward, even if they win, what do they actually win at the end of the day? So that then flows into what I refer to as damages, where Angola had mentioned compensation. If you look at the historical damage awards given in Nova Scotia, and I'll use race as an example, the numbers are so low that it's absolutely disgusting that board chairs or board of inquiry chairs at that particular time or over history have given basically peanuts for successful complainants where race, say, is the protected characteristic at play. And I think part of that problem is, or stems from, that individuals don't have a real appreciation for race and racism and how it impacts the entire body, the family, and the community. It's not like a broken arm that will heal over amount of time. These scars are going to be there with that individual for life. The other part, when you say, is it really worth it? And you know what? Over the years, it hasn't been worth it. How much money can really be given to an individual to soothe the sting of discrimination? I would say arguably there's not an amount out there that's large enough to heal the wounds that I would have had to endure in the workplace or any other spot. Luckily, in the last probably, I'll say 2 or 3 years, there have been decisions out of Nova Scotia in particular that damage awards have taken a significant jump. It's nowhere near the level it has to be to accurately and appropriately compensate an individual, but it is a far cry and a far better cry than where it was, say, back in the 90s, say, for example, the Kirk Johnson case, where it was only $10,000 was the limit, was the high watermark. And that's just absolutely disgusting as far as I'm concerned, as a practitioner and as a Black male in Nova Scotia as well. So I hear you loud and clear there. And I think we just have to keep pushing the bar. And part of my job that I find when I'm doing it is that I keep pushing that bar so board chairs have something to chew on and make a decision. So we do have precedents going forward for those who are coming behind us. So that'd be my rant for this evening.
Well, obviously, higher awards against repeat offenders, let's just say, would maybe give them a different
Right.
look on things.
That's right. And for the longest time, just the cost of doing business, they could write a check for 10,000, no problem, for 20,000, no problem, depending on the size of the employer. So if you really want to send a strong message, why not say, and again, I'm going to really, exaggerate here, but why not charge them 10 million and then see if that behavior continues? I bet you won't see that behavior again. So.
I think if we think in terms of the cost to complainant, as Kendrick has eloquently explained, it's really, there's nothing for them in the case that when you think about it, even the outcome of the case. Often what happens is the precedents that every case might set, and also outcome, and also the way that can also encourage other people to say, they went through that and they went through it successfully, I can do that too. So if we use the Kirk Johnson's case as an example, there has been a whole lot that ultimately came out of that case. And I'm sure Kendrick can cite the example of how that particular case has also become, as you said, the case law that is being referred to within human rights settlement. And then also, if you think about things like the most recent street check report that came out, that also came out as a result of the Kirk Johnson's case. And then the whole concept of, driving while Black, shopping while Black, and walking while, all of these concepts, all of this awareness are coming out as a result of these, I'll call them courageous individuals that sort of put everything on stake to say, I'm going to go through this process and I'm doing this. And even if you hear in the video that we play with Kirk Johnson, his whole idea of doing this was not even for him. It was the fact that I don't want my children to have to go through this. I don't want other people to have to go through this. If it's going to cost me, I'll go through this. But to be able to show that within the police, within the structure, discrimination exists. So sometimes, I guess to answer your question, there may not really be anything for the individual, but it's just more bringing about the systemic change and hoping that others will not have to experience what they have gone through.
And that's very tough for people. That takes a strain on their health. It takes a strain on them physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, spiritually, financially. You could go through all of those, and that would take a lot out of an individual. And the good thing about all of this with the changes, and thank you guys all so much, is the fact that I have to say, people of color, Black people, BIPOC, whatever, we're being believed. The stories are not just in my head. So if I'm seeing it, I'm feeling it, then it is real. And I need that is understood by those people that I tell it to, that I write it to, that I want to involve in my world. We just have to be more supportive, understanding, compassionate, and believe that this is something that's happening to me. And it's not just me thinking in my head that, oh, everyone looks at me like that. No, there's certain things that we know that triggers, and we know that this is something that is discriminatory, whether it is right out in our face or if it's microaggressive. There's things out there that we deal with every day. And I just want to say one story. Today I was downtown in beautiful downtown Shelburne. And I was, I had taken my brother down for something downtown, and there was an AO knows this because it was a doctor, it was a Black doctor that's in Shelburne, and I believe it wasn't AO, but I thought it was, because I was yelling at him in TLC, AO, and then I got accused of stereotypical, so I thought I better be careful, like not to yell at, but this was a really nice looking doctor, and I told AO, that's why I was yelling out his name. So then when I know, right? Racial profile, the racial profile. I was outside with my brother and 2 other people that I knew from town, and the doctor came out of the TLC. And so the people that we were around were all like, "Is that the new doctor?" Right? And so then we found out that it was. So he came over, and my brother John is very abrasive. So he came over and started to talk to us. And then one of the ladies in the group said, "Oh, I have a doctor like you." And I said to her, I don't know what to me, I kind of like just lost it. I swear to God, I didn't beat her up. I didn't do anything like that. But I looked over and I said to her, "So what do you mean by that? When you're saying that, what do you?"
Like you.
A little bit, and she switched it over to something else. And those are the small microaggressions that we hear every day in our life, that if we don't address them on the spot in a kind, nice, beautiful manner, they're going to you. And so I felt it was not to protect the doctor, because I'm sure he had his own, but just to say that not to be tolerated in this small community. As small as it is, as difficult as it is, it's a beautiful place, but there are still those underlying 80-20% that is lack of, and I said this to somebody today, EDI, this community, our community, we need more information and training on exclusive equity, diversity and inclusiveness, because we're not there yet. So hopefully coming out of this, our AO might be around that, but we definitely need to focus on that. And I'm coming to you as a Black woman, as a dark-skinned woman, that the colorism exists. It exists in the community, it exists around us. So those are small things. We need to start to educate, not having that history in school. I didn't have it about the Black school, but neither did the white people. So because they were all in the same boat together, right? So then schools and educating, let's do this and let's do it so that everyone gets this training and this education. I'm done. I'm done.
Don't believe it. Can I just add one other thing there? I know there was some discussion around the financial costs of going to the Human Rights Commission and going through a board of inquiry, as well as the human cost as well. And all of that at play with no guarantee that the individual is going to win. And I think it's important, and I've done this on numerous occasions, that just because the complainant doesn't win at the board of inquiry stage, that does not necessarily mean that what they experienced was not real and that they weren't discriminated against. From a legal perspective, generally what that means is that there just wasn't enough evidence there for the board chair to make a finding or a positive finding of discrimination. So I think even though, there may not have been a successful outcome, that doesn't diminish by any stretch of the imagination what the individual went through and what they experienced. So just want to throw that out there as well.
Thank you, Deirdre.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, I think we've been doing that Q&A organically. I love that. We didn't have to say, "Oh, now it's time to start asking your question." So we still have a few more minutes left, and none of us, I don't think anyone is going back to Halifax tonight.
We're not.
We're not.
5:30 a.m.
So we're still here. So if folks, I know some folks may have questions. So folks may have questions that they want to ask. Please, let's keep it going. Oh, thank you, Steve. And on the screen, we do have the information on how to reach out. And I'm going to give you, don't worry, we're going to give you some cards. Do they have those cards? For those who are here, and you can just take one and pass it around. So if folks want to reach out to the Human Rights Commission, if you have an inquiry, or if you're thinking that you might have a complaint that you want to bring, please. I'm sure Gola and our team would love to.
Could I just, in the interest of fairness, and full-on disclosure and resetting our relationship, I have to tell you, like any other service provider in this province, we have a backlog, and we are not proud of it. And at this point, we have had so much transition in our team, that's why we're all new. And so please bear with us over the next, by December, my team is going to be in. And you will, I'm just gonna say it out loud because I'll speak it into existence. When you call, you will get a live person.
Unheard of.
And if not, I will come back here and I will explain why.
Oh,
Okay, we're trying, we'll take you off, no, please.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Yes.
So if folks, if you still have questions, and for those that are online, I'm not sure how many folks are there right now. Again, I just want to say thank you for your participation. If you have questions, please feel free to put it in the chat for those who are on Zoom. So if you have questions, please, we want to hear from you. You can put it in the chat. We're also monitoring that. And at this point, if you're not able to get your question in right now, you can also email your question to that email address on the screen. And maybe Steve, do you want to put that contact information in the chat? Is it possible? Okay, cool. So anyway, so that's that's the how you can be able to reach out to the commission if needed. So this has been good. Gola,
Oh, no,
you want
we have snacks.
to? Thank you. So we have snacks and drinks and stuff for
steak.
folks. Please make sure you have some refreshment before heading out.
Yes.
So I guess once again, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone for showing up tonight, and most especially again to Andrea and her team and Miss Darlene for opening this space. This is a beautiful space, and I think my staff, they fell in love with this place, walking in. So it's a really nice place to be, and every time I come here, I feel right at home because part of my history is here.
Yes.
And I can connect with that every time I walk into this space. So it's an amazing place. So thank you very much. And thank you for coming out. We appreciate it. And those online, thank you very much. And I want to apologize for all the technical glitches that we had today. Really apologize for that. Technology sometimes is beyond everybody's control. Kendrick, do you want to put in some words before we say goodbye?
No, just again would echo what you said in terms of thanking everyone for coming out. Thanks for the rich conversation and the questions. I love those kind of questions. I love that kind of debate and exchange. Every conversation I have, there's always an opportunity to learn. So, and I've done that once again this evening. So I appreciate everyone there and I appreciate their spirit and their warmth. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Yeah, and I want to make sure we hear from some of the folks that are here. Angela, so I'm just going to go around. Angela, you say some word to the amazing folks.
I do. I just want to thank you so much for inviting us here and allowing us to have this safe conversation on very, shaky topics like the past, but we're not there, we're here and we're going forward together. And I know in my position, I'm not going anywhere. So I'm ready to do the work, the hard work, and to do it whenever it needs to be done. And to be an advocate, to be an ally. And I think that is the biggest, most important part of who we are as human beings. We have to stand up for each other and step up when we have to step up, speak up when we have to speak up, and have integrity. So with that, I am so grateful to all of you.
Thank you, Angela.
Do you have a card? Do you have a card? Too?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Steve.
I'd just like to say thank you so much for welcoming us here. This is a beautiful place with beautiful people in it. And thank you very much for your technical support.
Yes, I mean, my team has said it briefly already, but I'm very full being here and listening to you all. Thank you so much for being so engaging and attentive and allowing us to have this discussion together. Thank you to the staff. I mean, I love being on the road with you guys. I think I learn so much every time I hear you all speak. As you can see, it's very complex and we are fairly new. So there's a lot to unpack and we get to do that together tonight. I would just say continue to keep speaking up, as Angela said, to keep having that courage to come forward and to tell us how we can do better. I am really passionate about that. I know I've already said it, but I'll say it again. If the commission needs to be doing other things to make you feel more supported to come forward with your complaints, please tell me. Please tell us. I can give you my card as well. You can email those things to me or call me up anytime. We have no problem answering the phone. Angela and I, our REI team, you can request training from us at any time. Doesn't have to be because of a complaint process. You can call us anytime if you feel like your place of work that you are needs to have a diversity training, needs to have a EDI training. We can come in and do that just because you've asked us to. So keep those things in mind as well. And I hope to see you all back very soon, maybe for a training session or for another information session with you all. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah.
You get the last one.
Yeah, just wanted to say, we are all new and we're really valuing each other. And we are loving our community. And this is an extension of our community. But again, in terms of my team and our role at the commission, we have strict boundaries that we have to observe. But that's why I want to go ahead and encourage you all as Nova Scotians, advocate, bring the problems, do it publicly, show us, hold us accountable. We don't take it personally. We can all do better. And if this is going to be a real relationship, we need to be held accountable. Okay? And the days of not listening, if that's what you've experienced before, this team, we're here to listen. So that's the first thing, hold us accountable. That's a true relationship where you can really speak your truth and know that the person's hearing you. The other thing is, next time we come, let's fill that space up there.
For sure.
As a goal, put the word on it.
Thank you, Gula.
Absolutely.
Miss Darlene and Andrea,
Thank you so much.
Yes.
we're leaving it with you.
Oh,
Yeah.
Give us some, yeah.
I'm not really gonna close it. I'll leave that up to Darlene, but I'm definitely in a position, having been gone from this community for 32 years and coming back and just being able to give, provide, love, feel, learn, unlearn, because we're all still unlearning. There's a lot of things myself coming from that world, which is in Ontario, to here, and then just not being able to understand why a lot of those policies and procedures that come from a big corporation with Black people, white people, all people are not here in a small town like this. So where are the drivers? Who are the drivers behind that? Is it something like us in here in the Black community where we have to drive that? Or is it something that we can come to a common ground and say, we would like to have you, consider doing this as a partner, as a networking with the community here? Because definitely there is a need, and this is my home. I came back after 32 years, left all my children in Ontario. My little grandson matters, but I'm here now because I want to be part of change. And I think that we are in a great position, especially what has happened recently with the youth. Because that, if you look around here, other than Braden, I don't know who else there was young, but the youth are here. So to reach out to the youth in this community is going to take effort. It's going to take outreach. It's going to take continuation. It's going to take, repeticism. We're going to have to just get them out here to get them involved, because that's where the change is going to come. We saw that, did we not, when it came to that gentleman that was recently killed in Ontario, right? With all that and statutes coming down and things changing, and it was all young people that was really the drivers behind all of that. So just keep in mind that they're desperately needed, and we need to learn. I think that Angela was saying that, to bring stuff to the education system, make sure it's there, because the untold stories, the unwritten parts of what we're discussing today, if we don't put this in some writing and share it out, which we intend to do on our website, then no one's going to know that we even existed here tonight. So we need to continue to talk, speak, love, learn, unlearn, and just cherish each other and enjoy life at the same time, and do it for the better good of humanity, human rights, right? What's the first word? Human. There we go. So let's make sure we focus on that.
Watch out, Darlene, we might be recruiting Andrea here.
It's funny you should say that, because I was just gonna say she's off limits. Complaint. But just in closing, for the Black Loyalists and very much like, Andrea, having grown up in this community, having gone away, returned after 40 years, it's surprising the knowledge that I've gained simply by the Human Rights Commission, that there is somebody out there to listen and to be respectful. And the education that has been brought to light here today has opened up a whole new avenue for more dialogue and inclusion. That EDI training is paramount, but it's education, because the vast majority of people do not know what their human rights are, period. It's just, I don't want people to be cattle and just go this way and that way. And when something does happen, it's heartfelt that there is a place that people can go to get that advice and to be heard, and obviously maybe have some type of settlement or resolution to it, because you may get the resolution, but the scars are still there. And it's very important to listen to people, and I'm very thankful and such grace and appreciation for all of you at the Human Rights. I don't want to say I want to contact you on any official level, but you know, you will always have a home here at the Black Loyalist Heritage Center.
Thank you so much.
Before we go, maybe snack and mingle a little bit. I just also wanted to bring our attention to this right here. If you want to just have a look, and there's also some magnets back here. Feel free to take a pen. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to hop in front. And yes, of course, folks online, we don't have pens for you. We're so sorry, but hopefully you can make it in person with us next time. And we're gonna leave the chat open, I guess, just for a moment while I hand these out. These are just the feedback forms I was speaking about in the beginning. And the questions are pertaining to African Associations, but please, if you don't identify with that identity, just, you know, for however it's true for you, please fill those out. It's just questions about how would you like to see the commission better supporting you ultimately. So please feel free to fill those, take those with you, email us later. So I will give those to you, and yes, please have some coffee, tea, and snack. Oh, thank you.
I'm still old school. I never had that coffee and text message today. So excited. I know.
Okay, folks, we are gonna let you go online. Thank you again for coming, and we will see you soon, hopefully. Or maybe not too soon.
Thank you. So
No, thank you.
Sam, how did you get this down?
We're gonna, like, you can email this and you know, I refer to my experience.
Basically, what's on human rights, not human rights, but the Lord's Day. Right. I was.
Oh, yeah, we just did the.
It's pretty, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're gonna bring it up to it.
And after that, you know, and a long day, and you know, to go.